Okay, cool. Let's see how you did. Hopefully that wasn't too bad. It was challenging, I'm not going to lie, but it's meant to challenge you and it's meant to push you to your limits, because whenever you're in the workplace, you're going to be pushed to your limits because there's always new technologies and always new situations to encounter. So my goal is to teach you, but also to push you a little bit as well. So anyways, let's go ahead and check out what is the solution. The very first thing we want to do is, of course, run all of these tests, which is the most fun part, is seeing all of this being executed. It's going to be extremely fast, but it's okay. And it's actually, unfortunately, running on my other screen, which you're not seeing right now, but no big deal, because we can see that 5 tests have passed, which is the ultimate sign. Now, let's talk about the solution here. I've created a class called WebDriver Methods Quiz. That's where I've placed the solution here. I've created a class level element named WebDriver and Web Element so that I don't have to keep instantiating these in every single one of my tests. We are using the before hook as before, where we're doing a setup and we're creating a new Chrome driver. We're using an after hook as before, where we are doing a teardown and just quitting the browser. Now let's take a look at the rest of this code here. Okay, so here is the very first test. Let me expand out the solution and you can see what we did here. So here is the navigation. Here is me finding the element called drop down. And then here's simply clicking on that element. You first have to click on it. Okay. Next, based on that, you can actually, and this I didn't teach you, you could have done it another way, but I wanted to show you a different way that you can do it. Is once you have an element, see how we stored the element in to a variable here? This is one WebDriver request right here. So here, the Chrome driver sends one web request to your browser saying find element by this ID, okay? And now we have it stored in this variable once it's found. And so now every single action afterwards is not going to cost more web requests in terms of finding an element. So here we're clicking on that element, and now here we can use this element that we found to dig into its children and find more elements inside of it. See the beauty of that? So we found that element, which was the drop down, and now we're going to find elements inside of that, which are the option value 1 and option value 2. Let me show you exactly what I mean here. So look, if we come over to this page and I inspect this, let me scroll up a bit and zoom in a bit. There you go. So look, once I select this drop down, which we found, you can see that inside of it, it has children, right? And so once we have this located, we can do a find element and just search its children. You could have obviously also found elements by doing element with ID drop down hashtag, and then look for different option elements, right? Or you could have found a child of this element. There's a number of ways you could have done it. I decided to go this route. And so that now I have my elements option 1 and option 2, which are corresponding to option 1 and option 2 in here, okay? So with that said, I'm going to click option 1, and then I'm going to assert. Here are some of the methods that are used to get information back from the web element. So here I'm checking that it is selected because we selected it. And here I'm checking that option 2 is not selected, and I'm doing assert false that this is selected. I also could have done obviously assert true and then have a not option 2 is selected. Either one of those. And you saw this run already, but let's run it again and hope that it comes into the right screen. You never know how these things work out. There it goes. You can see it's selected and it passed successfully. So that's solution 1. Let's take a look at solution 2. For the hover, we are navigating to the hover page, and then we're finding the element by class name figure. Here I specified the first image, so it doesn't matter that there are 3. When you specify find an element by some locator, and that locator, there are multiple of those elements, it will always pick the very first one. And so it worked out perfectly here for me. I just used class name and picked the first one, no problem. And here is us using the actions class, and we are moving to the element. Here's the element that we found. And then don't forget that you always need to perform with the actions in order for it to actually happen. Now, you could have done a build, but a build, all that does is it builds this into an action object. And so then I could have stored this into an action object. And if I wanted to repeat this multiple times, let me actually show you here better like this. I'm going to just do this here and comment that out. And let's call this move to. And that's in, there you go. So see that? So now if I wanted to do move to many times, I would just do this. And then if I needed to do it in the future again, I would just do the same thing. Just like that, okay? So that is the purpose of build. Although I have rarely used build, it might come in handy, again, if you need to repeat an action multiple times. So instead, we can just always use perform. Of course, perform is not going to return us an action. And so we can always use perform, and that will automatically just execute that action. So we executed that action, and then as we were hovering over that element, I checked for this other element to contain this text, and then I checked that it is displayed, because if it's not displayed, then this will return us a false, and so then it will fail. So I can show you an exact example, right? I can change this to user 2, which we will not be hovering on, right? Because we're going to be hovering on the very first icon. And so now I'm going to run this, and you're going to see that it fails because it's expecting the string user 2. However, we get the string user 1. And you can see it failed. And then let's come here, take a look at our assertion message. And look, it says here, assertion message, user 1 should appear because we hovered over that image. And then we can, of course, expand this right here. If I can click. There you go. And we will see here at the top that our hover method failed at line 78. Not a very friendly assertion. So one of the things I'm starting to recommend to you from this point forward is always try to use messages inside of your assertions, because they will make your error messages that much better for debugging purposes. Getting back friendly error messages is extremely important for test automation, and it's something that most automation engineers unfortunately do not do. So I'm letting you know, do it, because it will really help to get your mean time to resolution, which is a very important factor in good quality test automation, to be that much quicker. Okay, let's talk about the next test right here, which is the right click. Now, to right click, all you have to do is find the appropriate element. You use the actions class, you do the context click, which is also a right click, and then that's it. And then you perform that action, and then I already told you how to switch to the alert and accept it. Let's go ahead and run it so that you can see that I'm not making this up. There it is. So our test passed. That one is probably the simplest one of all of these, right? Next, we got the key presses. The key presses, you just navigate to the URL, find the element. This should have been super easy, and then you click inside of that element, because in order to be able to pass in the keys, you have to click inside of it. Then I use the actions class again, which you should be very familiar with now. And then I am sending the keys And then, oh, this is one thing I should have pointed out to you, and that's kind of my fault. I apologize for not pointing it out to you, but Selenium provides us a very nice enum called keys that allows us to pass in whatever element we want, whatever action we want. So look, we can do keys dot, and you can see that there is a bunch of different keys that we can pass in, you know, from F1 to home to insert and so on. And so I was just able to basically pass in a right arrow. All of this ultimately boils down into string. It boils down into string commands that are then transformed into keyboard commands. But you don't have to worry about that. Just know that you can use the keys command, or you can actually pass in characters in here. You can, for example, pass in like special characters that will signify a right arrow or alt or option and so on and so forth. So I did a pause here just in case to slow down the test and also show you how to use the pause method. And then I also use the perform in order to execute the action. And you can see here how I'm building up these actions together, and I can chain as many of them as I want, and then I can do a perform. Okay? So then after I did that, I checked this element for the result, and then I made sure that we got the right message, which was this string expected right here. So I can even change this, and you will see that it fails if I do this. See that? Test failed. Let's read our error message to see if it's friendly. Look, this is one of the reasons why I love assert equals, is because it's so easy to understand what happened. Look, so clicked right arrow key, okay? Expected this, but got back that. So of course, we modified it, so we really should be expecting this back. But look how much cleaner it is and easier to understand exactly what happened versus the previous error. So let's return this back, and then obviously you know it will pass based on the error message. Okay, now the final question, where we navigate to this URL, find the element by link text. That should have been super easy for you. Then we get the attribute. I told you about this ability to get information from elements, and we simply just get the href attribute. And so that will, of course, return the value of that link. So if we go back here and come here and we inspect this element, here's the href attribute. Yes, here it says that it returns only this partial, but actually this is because of the way the application is coded. It will return you the entire URL. It always will. So then once it does that, we assert that it equals to this value. We assert equals that this is equal to this link, which is very easy. And then we just get our CSS value, which I told you about this method as well, but we've never used it. And so this was your opportunity to use it. And all you have to do is just search for the string, and it will return you the value of that string. And I already showed you that result here, which is basically we are just asking for this string and asking for its key. You can select any number of properties here that you want, and I've seen automation engineers even checking RGB values. It's totally unnecessary. It's something I would do with visual validation, but if you wanted to go that route, you certainly can, but I would really, really strongly discourage it. But also I wanted to show you these CSS properties so that you know that they are available, so that if you do need to validate different kind of stuff like CSS values, you have that capability. Okay, cool. So I hope you really enjoyed this quiz. I certainly enjoyed giving it. Of course, I'm always here for you. Let me know if you have any questions, and see you in the next video.